Welcome to Books versus Movies, the podcast where I set out to answer the age-old question, is the book really always better than the movie? I'm Lluvia, an actress and book lover based out of New York City, and I'm excited because I have a special guest here with me today, and it is my husband, Orlando.
Hello.
You've heard me talk about him on the podcast. I'm so sorry because I never actually asked you for permission to talk about you on the podcast, and I just felt comfortable enough to do it, and I started calling you out, and now everyone knows your bad habits.
Everyone knows my beef.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
okay. I don't mind.
Okay. I mean, I figured you wouldn't. If you were like someone that minded, I feel like I definitely wouldn't have said anything.
No, I don't mind at all. It's fun.
All right. Well, we are here because today we're going to talk about Watchmen by Alan Moore and the film adaptation directed by Zack Snyder. So, yeah, we know that there's an HBO TV show adaptation, which we've seen, but we're not going to talk about that one. We're going to talk about the actual film that came out in 2007, I think.
Yeah, sounds about right.
All right. Well, really quickly, before we get started, you also know him. I've talked about him all the time. You've heard his jingles in the background. So if you are watching the actual video, here's our little guy.
There's a cute little guy.
This
A
is
cute little Voldy.
Voldy. So now you know what he looks like. He's an old man and he's grumpy because I woke him up from his nap. So there you go. Go back to sleep. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So the reason I wanted to talk to you about Watchmen is because for whatever reason, you know that I don't do well with graphic novels. I don't know what it is about them, but it's hard for me to understand them.
Yes, you have mentioned that to me.
Yeah, I can and it's I can read comics just fine. I can read manga, but like graphic novels, I don't know what it is about them that I struggle. Um,
Meanwhile, that's what I love reading.
yeah, that's you love superheroes, you love graphic novels, you this is like you're a nerd when it comes to this stuff. So I wanted to bring you on because you'll probably have some more nuanced takes that I didn't even realize. Um, all right, so why don't you tell people what Watchmen is about?
Well, what Watchmen is about, this is basically like a alternative historical timeline. In this timeline, Nixon gets reelected and he somehow breaks the rules and becomes reelected. I don't know how many times. In this world, we have superheroes. From my understanding, this was meant to be like the anti-superhero kind of graphic novel. So you have superheroes that are more of your average person, and a lot of different things tend to happen. But taking place in the 80s, one of the big pivotal elements that are strong in the comic book is the Cold War. And just the overall fear that different countries, the US, Russia had with the Cold War as who's going to drop what bomb, who's going to destroy what country. Uh, and along the way, there's superheroes involved in this storyline, which feels like the premise of both the comic book and the movie. Um, yeah, I don't know if I, do you think I missed something?
No, I think you're good.
Okay.
So, and you'd say the film is pretty much that too. Like there, it's not adaptation wise, it doesn't veer too far from that.
Adaptation wise, it is the same, similar storyline. I will get into, I guess, the differences better because I will say I am very grateful that you put me up to this task. Because reading this now at age 36, I saw so many things differently. than when I read it back in, I must have read it like in 2008, 2009, if the movie came out in 2007. Clearly there's things I missed, and I am glad I reread it because I caught more things. But anyway, the basic storyline, sure, it's the same.
Okay, cool. So, and as always, I try my best to do these reviews without spoilers. And then I quickly discovered as I was doing my first episode, it's kind of hard to do these without spoilers. So yeah, there will be spoilers in case you're not familiar with the story of Watchmen. Um, but I don't even know where to start. I guess you're more into the fandom. I know that this is one of the most hated like graphic novel adaptations to date. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's like the most hated, but it's definitely one of the most hated. A lot of like fanboys hate this movie. So I'm just wondering if you have any ideas as to why that is.
I now do. I now do because I remember when I watched the movie first, then read the graphic novel. And obviously my maturity level was significantly different. And to me, I was like, why are people so upset about this? Like it is very much the same. Like one of the things Zack Snyder loves to do is recreating images from the comic into a film, and he has so many of them. But now that I reread it with a, I guess, higher maturity and understanding, there's so much missing in the sense of, I'm gonna call it the beef of the story. It's missing the soul of the characters. It is missing the juiciness of this. Basically, this graphic novel is supposed to be, like this play on the superheroes, kind of making fun of the superheroes while making a social commentary as to what is going on in the world at that time period. Which even though it is an alternative timeline, it still has some very similar things that happened in our timeline. And then the movie is basically superheroes, which is the anti of what the story was going for. It was sort of trying to be the anti-superhero storyline, and they somehow took that storyline and made it a superhero action flick. So I think that is the biggest upset. Um, I know the ending, again, I'll try to keep it spoiler free as much as I can, but I know the ending was the biggest one for people, which to me that's a very minor upset compared to everything else. There's just so many little details that you can put in a thicker graphic novel that in a movie you can skip. Although I will say Zack Snyder, I don't remember the runtime of the movie, but Zack Snyder likes making his movies long.
Yeah.
So with how long that movie was, I think there was space for a lot of the little juicy elements that he left out. But what I feel like it's missing overall is the soul of the comic of the graphic novel.
Okay. So because I remember we talked about this because this was one of the graphic novels and films that you made me watch, or not made me, but yeah, I'm just gonna say it like that. When we first started dating, when we were like introducing each other to the films we liked and all that stuff, like that was one of the first things you made me watch when we started dating. And I remember you clearly saying like you didn't understand all the hate it got.
Yeah,
So it I'm guessing your opinion has changed.
it has changed significantly
Okay.
since rereading it and understanding it a little better, I guess.
Do you hate the movie now?
I don't hate it. I think I'm still gonna watch it and be entertained. I think had I understood the graphic novel first and then watched the movie, then I'd probably hate the movie. Um, at the end of the day, the movie is kind of nostalgic for me just because it was fun.
Okay.
And at the time, I feel like the movie was a big deal because what do we have? We had like X-Men, we had Fantastic Four, the Spider-Man movies. This was the first time they took superheroes in a dark way, at least in a mainstream media kind of way.
Okay.
So, it still has that nostalgia factor for it.
No, that's fine. And it's I just want to say you were like, I'm gonna try to not spoil the ending, and I'm gonna spoil the ending because
Okay.
no, because I could have sworn that the ending of the film was the same as it was in the graphic novel, and it wasn't. Because when we watched this film together in preparation for this episode, it ended, and I was like, wait a minute, where's the giant squid? Did I make that up? And then, like, I was flipping through the graphic novel, and I went to the last chapter, but the and I couldn't find the squid anywhere in that last chapter. So I was like, did I make up this giant squid up? Was this giant squid in a completely different comic book? And then the giant squid appeared, not in the last chapter of the graphic novel. So I was like, okay, I am right. There is a giant squid involved. Um,
Yeah.
why do you think they didn't you bring in the giant squid?
I think it was the because yeah, I think Zack Snyder does this a lot with his movies. I think he tries to ground his characters a little too much in reality.
Oh, okay.
And I think and I mind you, I don't know if this is the actual thought process, but I'm trying to think in the Zack Snyder mindset. It was like, well, instead of a interdimensional squid, we just do like an explosion of some sort. Um, that or creating the interdimensional squid took out so many characters and so many storylines from the graphic novel. So I don't know if in order to trim, they trimmed out that whole entire element that kind of reduces a bit of the chapters in the book. So either one of those two things, it just seems that, but I have a feeling it's more to make it more grounded and more real, quote unquote.
Okay. Yeah, because I was very disappointed that the squid wasn't in there.
Yeah.
Because and I love that the TV series starts with the squid.
Yeah. Yeah. You see all the squid marks and all the leftover nasty squids.
Yeah. So yeah. So I know Orlando was trying not to ruin it for you, but I love that giant squid. So I needed to talk about that giant squid. So I have mentioned this before, and I've said that I hate the whole book within a book trope. Like for me, it feels like it slows down the pacing.
Yeah.
That being said, I didn't mind the the book within a book that was at the end of each chapter, and I think that was mainly because before it was made into the one big graphic novel, that would have just been the ending of the singular comic book.
Yeah.
So it's not really ruining the storyline. So the one that did bug me was the pirate one, because
Okay.
that one was like, why are we talking about what is the point of these pirates? So what is the point of those freaking pirates?
So we are on the same boat on this. Because I love the books within the books because they bookended the chapter. And I feel like a lot of them gave us more insight into the characters. Like my favorite one was I think I'm gonna pull up my notes. I was the Under the Hood storyline because it gives us an overall idea as to how these characters kind of got started. Um, so I love those little ones. I am still confused by the pirate. The only thing I know about the pirate storyline is that the creator of the comic, of the pirate comic, is one of the artists that is kidnapped by, well, quote unquote, kidnapped. Basically, taken away by Ozymandias into this island of artists and scientists. And he is the one that is pivotal into making this giant squid. But I don't know how his storyline ties into it. Like, other than him being the creator of the pirate comic, and we know throughout the graphic novel that he disappears. Nobody knows where he's gone. He disappears. And you know, the kid that's reading at the newsstand, he even makes a
Hmm.
note, is like, I hate this because it ends and nobody knows what's going to happen next because it ends. So other than being created by the guy who creates the squid, I don't know what the point of the comic is. And there was some moments in which I kept rereading it, trying to figure out, but maybe you have a smarter reading fan that can let us know what exactly the pirate comic means, because I was also at a loss.
Okay. Well, see, but I'm glad I still asked you that, even though you didn't know the answer, because I know we were introduced to the like we didn't know where he was, and then like midway through the comics, we get through the graphic novel, we get introduced to him, and then another spoiler alert, he ends up dying. Um, but I did not realize that he was there to create the giant squid. Like I thought that it was just he was just introduced and then we killed him off and it was like, okay, well, bye random. Bye.
Yeah, Adrian or Ozymandias in in his giant speech where he's revealing everything he did, he
Okay.
talks about how he gathered together an artist, a scientist. He lists them, and one of those is the comic book
Okay.
creator and his partner. That's the artist that we see scenes of them together. But again, still don't fully understand what their scenes together even means.
Okay. No, that's cool. I'm still glad I asked you that. So I want to know what's the change between the graphic novel and the adaptation that you dislike the most?
Ooh, where to begin? Which one to choose?
Yeah, or you can name them
Um,
all. I don't know. Or you can name more than one. That's fine.
you know what?
I
I'm gonna start off with the insight into the characters and more of the characters' personalities. The two ones that stick out to me is Silk Spectre,
mhm.
the Laurie one, and Rorschach. Now, Laurie in the movie is you get the idea that she's the daughter that didn't really want to be the superhero, um, but ends up doing it. And she's in a skin tight outfit, and it's sexy. She's the hot one that's falling for Night Owl, which is another thing that I wish had more insight. But in the comic book, she is so funny. She is hilarious. She has so many funny moments. And especially her and Night Owl, their relationship is hilarious, and you can see how they work together. Um, and also, I guess one thing I did like about the movie is Silk Spectre's costume. It is significantly skimpier in the comic book, but I think that was a commentary on female superheroes in comics.
Mhm.
Anyway, so yeah, I felt like it was me. Her personality was definitely missing. Her relationship with Night Owl in the movie is very much, I left John, here I am, let's have sex. While as in the comic book, it's weeks. Like she still goes back to John. The whole thing happens where he goes back to Mars. Then she's lost at school. She doesn't know where to go. Then Anato, Dan takes her in, and it's still a matter of time before the relationship forms. Like in the movie, it makes it seem like she left Dr. Manhattan to be with Night Owl, while in the comic book, the relationship formed because Night Owl was the only one she whose identity she knows, and they lived together, and that's when the relationship started forming. But they are just so funny together. They have so many hilarious scenes that are completely like I felt those, and I feel like I even made the comment this last time we watched it, where I was like, she just doesn't have the personality. Like she's just, I'm the hot superhero. And reading the graphic novel, it bothered me just how much of that was missing.
Mhm.
In the case of Rorschach, I felt like how do I describe it? In the movie, they made him like every straight man's dream. Like everybody who saw the scene where he ends up killing the pedophile, everyone was like, "Yeah, I would do the same, bro." Like that was the attitude of everybody watching Rorschach, and everybody who loves Rorschach loves him because, like, yeah, I feel like if I was pushed over the edge, I would do the same. While as in the comic book, you don't end up like you should not end up liking him. You should not end up agreeing with him. Like you kind of understand why he becomes the way he is, but he is insane. Like
Mm-hmm.
he is, and one, for example, a character that I wish had more depth in the movie was his psychiatrist
Mm-hmm.
or psychotherapist because he ends up leading his psychotherapist not I'm not gonna say insane, but in a very depressed state because of the mind games that Rorschach plays with him. But there's also some fun for example, in the movie when you see Rorschach with the sign,
Mm-hmm.
you already know it's him, especially because we know which actor plays him. In the comic book, him without a mask is a completely different persona than with the mask. He is silly, he's dumb, he's very quirky, and when the mask comes on, he's just vicious.
Yeah.
So I wish a lot of those distinctions were more in the movie, rather than again they just became superheroes
Yeah.
instead of giving them the depth that they had.
Yeah.
And the other one change that really bothered me is the lack of humans. At first, the humans in the graphic novel may seem very unnecessary because you see their storylines happening and you don't quite understand. But when they all come together in that moment in New York, right before the squid is gonna appear, it kind of gets to you because as the readers, we are the humans, and we followed all of these characters' storylines from the beginning of the graphic novel. Now we're seeing them all together, and they're all gonna die because they're at the epicenter of this attack. So in the movie, we see them, we see the newspaper guy and the teenager get wiped out, but we didn't care for them. We they we were expected to just believe, oh, humans got killed. Now we're sad. Well as in the graphic novel, we followed their story all the way through and saw them die, and that was a little bit more impactful. And there's that on the next chapter. There's those pages in which it's just imagery of New York with everybody dead, and you see those characters, and it sucks. It really hurts. So I wish that element was some way put into the movie.
Yeah. Um, with me, I agree with that one. I remember in the graphic novel when the comic or newspaper stand owner and the teenager that's reading the pirate novel, like the final image we get of them is like them running into each other's arms,
Yes.
like right before the explosion happens. I thought that was really impactful, and that really stuck with me. So I agree with that. I wish that we had kept that. Um, and then the other change that I kind of wish they had kept it as it was in the graphic novel. I kind of liked that Laurie finds out from Dr. Manhattan who her father is, as opposed to her mother telling her.
Yeah.
So yeah. But
Uh,
were there were there any changes that you actually liked?
that I actually liked from the movie.
Yeah.
Trying to think of some. Uh, the handling of the LGBTQ characters is a lot smoother in the movie,
Hmm.
and this is an iffy one because at the same time, I do like that the graphic novel included them
Hmm.
and made them a storyline, but it was clearly written by somebody who either didn't agree. There's a lot of homophobic language
Yeah.
in a. in a way that doesn't feel warranted.
Mhm.
Because if it was making a commentary on it, that would be one thing, but it doesn't. Um, like Dr. Manhattan wearing his little Speedo is he gets so many homophobic remarks about it. Um, which thankfully I feel like the movie had the characters,
Mhm.
but didn't make them what do I want to say? Like didn't make a commentary on them. They just existed.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Um, I'm trying to think if there was anything else. I truly love that he recreated some of the scenes, like seeing some of the little panels and seeing them in the movie. It's like, well, that's cool. I just wish he had followed through with
Yeah.
everything else.
But that being said, we do need to talk about what is considered as well one of the worst sex scenes on film. That one, yeah, I mean, it's just so cheesy because like Silk Spectre and Night Owl start going at it, and then Hallelujah starts playing. That's so it's like okay, and then this does happen in the graphic novel, but it's not as cheesy or awkward. But like as they climax, they press the button and the fire releases at the same time that they climax, and it's just so jarring in the film that you just have to laugh. Like it's a
Yeah.
funny sex scene and it's not meant to be, but it is hilarious.
And I think the reason the graphic novel is not as cringy is because we've seen how funny they are. Like during that whole scene where uh just in that scene where she's trying to get people out of the fire of the burning building, this one lady's like, "What are you even wearing?" And she's like, "Man, do you want to be saved or not?" Like that's the kind of attitude that Silk Spectre has, which I wish was more in the movie. So because we've seen them be funny, them having sex and accidentally hitting the button is still funny. And I think the movie just kind of totally missed the mark. And Hallelujah, just wrong, wrong song
Yeah,
choice.
they took it way too seriously.
Yeah, and yeah, that's I think that's what it is. They took it seriously when it's supposed to be natural. It's just supposed to be a very natural scene that happens.
Yeah,
With very natural mistakes of accidentally hitting the button.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I want to know what you thought about just like the art style of the graphic novel. It fits very well, like the whole gritty and everything. Um, but there was definitely some moments in which like Laurie, and then the original Night Owl, Hollis Mason, there's moments in which like in Hollis Mason's autobiography, and then there's a flashback with Laurie in which they're like, I'm only 13 years old, but then you look at like the drawing of them and they look like they're in their 20s.
Yeah. Which I mean, I don't know where's the because in the graphic novel, yes, I agree. They look a lot older than what they're being described.
Yeah.
Um, but then again, the movie kept the same actors. Like in the movie, I never got that the comedian started being a superhero at 17
Mm-hmm.
because they used the same actor. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah.
and in the graphic novel, it lets you know he's 17 and he does look younger. His costume's completely different. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess it doesn't bother me as much because you can only do so much with graphic novels with the
No,
comic
no,
books,
I know.
especially because I feel like this was still a pen and paper kind of
Yeah.
graphic novel. But it is pretty funny. I Since we're on that subject, one of the things I also like the movie didn't kind of fix is that Dr. Manhattan approaches Laurie when she's 16.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was icky.
Yeah,
Especially because he's very well aware that she's a teenager.
and it's not just that, like he knows that she's a teenager, and so there's that, but then he's so much older than her, which is the other thing. So she's 16 when he starts pursuing her. He's like in his 40s or 50s
Yeah,
technically, right? And
yeah,
then but he's like this all-knowing being. So I feel like that just adds like 1,000 years to his age. Um so that was really like in the graphic novel. In the film they just say, um when his ex-girlfriend just says like, oh, you're leaving me for this younger girl, but she could easily be like in her early 20s.
yeah,
When I was reading the graphic novel and I was like, she's 16 and you're basically like this god figure, which is why I'm saying it feels like that adds like 1,000 years to his age. So it's like you're this like all-knowing being who's gonna live forever. So you're as old as dirt at this point and you're still pursuing this like little girl. Is there really no other women you can pursue?
yeah. And like in the movie, the ex-girlfriend makes a like you said, she makes the line of "You're leaving me for someone younger." Okay, kind of makes that's gross, but okay. In the comic book, it's like she straight up calls him jailbait. Like
Yeah,
you're leaving me for jailbait, and in the movie, his response is, "Yes, she was right." And it's the same response in the graphic novel, and it's like, okay, one is grosser than the other.
yeah,
That's
definitely.
just wrong.
That's very, very wrong. Yeah, that really did bug me as well reading it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I feel like I would have been grossed out no matter when I read this. But actually no, because even when I read it when we first started dating, I I was probably like grossed out, but yeah, now I'm definitely like, ooh,
Yeah.
bro, no, like I can't be on your side knowing that you did this.
Yeah, no. And like you say, he's an all-knowing God figure, and you should know better, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, our time here is running a little short. Is
Okay.
there anything, because I, knowing that I don't really understand graphic novels, I was like, I'm not going to take any notes. I'm just going to read it. And what I understand is what I'm going to bring into this episode. And like, I was looking at your notes and it's like a ton. So I'm sure you have a
Yeah.
lot to say. Is there anything you want to add before we talk about which one we think is the winner?
I I just feel like we can't finish. There's a lot of notes, but I feel like we can't finish the episode without addressing the SA scene
Mm-hmm.
with comedian assaulting Silk Spectre, and there is just so many things handled. Alan Moore is terrible at writing women. He always gives them the worst possible scenario to happen. So get that out of the way because he doesn't he gives the worst experiences to the women characters in his graphic novels. But there was a lot of lines that kind of really bothered me. For example, when the scene is happening, the one who comes to the rescue is Hooded Justice. But after rescuing her, Hooded Justice pretty much blames it on her. He says, "Well, next time don't wear something that skimpy." And Also, we end up finding out that she ends up actually sleeping with the comedian because she falls in love with him, which is very weird to me. I feel as gross as it was in the movie,
Mhm.
it's grosser in the graphic novel. Like in the graphic novel, the last panel we see of um the original Silk Spectre is, Laurie explains that they have to go into hiding, but they wanted to see her, blah, blah, blah. They leave. She still looks at the comedian's picture and kisses it and leaves like a lipstick mark on him. And it's like, that is still so handled
Very,
not
very gross.
well.
Yeah, it's like, no. Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. And I, I know the movie had to continue that storyline because how else is Laurie going to exist without comedian and Silk Spectre actually sleeping together?
Yeah.
But surprisingly, that's one thing that the movie did handle better. Um, it's still icky, but not nearly as icky as it is in the graphic novel.
Yeah. No, I
Um,
agree.
yeah.
Um,
Um,
is there anything else you're gonna say?
no, I mean, like I said, I have so many notes, but then that would be like a 3 hour episode. I don't think we want that.
Um, well, that being said, I want to ask you, who wins? Is it the book or the movie?
Well, this despite all the ickiness, rereading this again, it has to go to the book. There's there's just so much detail, so much personality, so much more necessary items that I felt the book was better.
I have to agree. My vote also goes for the book in this case because as much as I struggled with it, I understood the plot a lot better of the graphic novel than I did of the film, and I understood everyone's character motivations a lot better. Um, like the scene where after Ozymandias reveals that he's the one behind everything because he's trying to bring about world peace,
Yeah.
and Rorschach leaves. I didn't really understand why Dr. Manhattan killed him, but in the graphic novel, I understood it a lot better. Um, that being said, I do wish that they had kept the moment in which the news reporter discovers or is about to discover Rorschach's journal. Um, because they cut that out in the film. And I what?
They leave it as a cliffhanger.
Oh, okay. Well, I missed it then. There you go.
Yeah, the it is again like what you're saying, it's a lot clearer.
Yeah.
In the graphic novel, you see him go to the pile of the scraps, while in the only instance you get in the movie is the package sliding into their mailbox.
Oh, see? Okay, yeah. There you go.
But
So
yeah.
so that is
um
oh, we have less than a minute. So I was gonna close it off, but what were you gonna say?
we have to close it out. That's fine.
So the graphic novel is the winner in this case. Tune in next time for It Ends With Us. Bye.
Bye.